back to our channel where we provide updates and undisclosed narratives on the royal family. We provide you with the exciting news: Prince William's secret flight to Balmoral exposed. Hidden documents that could shatter the monarchy. Prince William's unanticipated and unannounced visit to Scotland generated much debate and discourse since it deviated from the conventional protocol of a senior royal. On a Wednesday evening, the Prince of Wales embarked in a private aircraft en route to an airstrip near Balmoral Castle. The journey remained undisclosed until aircraft monitors detected it. Kensington Palace did not make a press statement beforehand. There was no entry in the court circular, and no apparent rationale was provided to the public. The silence was atypical for an institution whose every move is often orchestrated and disseminated to the public. It swiftly elicited questions such as, what accounts for this secrecy? How challenging was this circumstance? Was it a familial crisis, a personal matter, or an altogether other circumstance? Individuals swiftly began assembling available information, and the tale quickly became the focal point for anyone seeking to analyze the state of the present monarchy. The flight's logistics were peculiar in many areas. Rather than leaving from RAF Northolt, which handles several government flights, it took off from a smaller airfield outside London, indicating an intention for discretion. The flight plan was deliberately unclear. It was filed under a non-specific call sign, and witnesses said that the departure time was altered with little warning. This conduct is not uncommon among those who prioritize their privacy. Nonetheless, when linked to the heir apparent, it becomes notable. Navigating in the current internet era without monitoring is extremely challenging. Aircraft enthusiasts and flight tracking websites oversee most private flights in contemporary society, leading to online conversations over the jet's trajectory and ultimate destination within hours. Kensington Palace remained silent for a while, despite reporters' requests for a remark. We deem the palace's reticence on the movement of a senior royal significant. Conjecture promptly filled this hole. This impromptu excursion seemed to be a deliberate departure for a monarchy established on formality and visibility. The conduct indicated that the subject was too sensitive for conventional institutional procedures. Royal travel often entails much preparation. Staff members coordinate itineraries, security teams conduct preliminary assessments, and the press office formulates statements to ensure public and media awareness. The absence of such occurrences prompted others to conclude that the journey was not a mere private visit, but rather a response to something both urgent and personal. Minor human elements began to emerge, thereby enhancing the richness of the narrative. In the weeks before his departure, many individuals had begun to observe that William's public manner was somewhat off. Despite his continuing execution of tasks with expected expertise, experienced royal journalists saw some modest changes. He delivered a forthright address on resilience and community at a mental health charity event in Manchester. Nevertheless, the video depicted him experiencing a moment of clear introspection after the conclusion of the speech. Upon receiving a letter from an aide, his expression momentarily became more solemn, and he left the venue more quickly than usual, refraining from participating in the customary informal conversations among the guests. At other times, photographers and visitors saw him smiling in a manner that seemed more contrived than genuine, or he would repeatedly examine his phone. He appeared to repress his genuine laughter. While isolated minor incidents are easy to overlook, their accumulation creates a pattern that is impossible to ignore. The ambiance at Kensington Palace was described by the staff as distinct from that often cultivated by the prince. Former employees described the setting as tranquil. The prince was allegedly dedicating extensive hours to his private study. Previously, collaborative meetings adopted a more formal tone, and non-essential events were discreetly postponed under the pretext of scheduling conflicts. Friends unaffiliated with the palace observed that he seemed increasingly reserved during private conversations. He felt disinclined to explore subjects that typically fascinated him, such as his environmental initiatives or familial narratives. He seemed to bear a significant concealed burden, and all these little modifications enhanced that impression. William's solitary drive on the Windsor estate late at night before his departure north was a detail that added to the narrative, suggesting that something substantial was occurring. It is uncommon for a senior royal to drive alone, since security personnel are often in attendance. For those acquainted with the routine, it seemed to be a solitary moment of contemplation. Yet subsequently, some saw it as an indication that he was grappling with a substantial issue prior to his impulsive decision to go to Scotland. This image portraying a future ruler discreetly traversing a familiar and intimate countryside resonated with me due to its depiction of humanity and vulnerability. It conveyed the sense of a man who at that specific moment preferred to be alone with his thoughts above the company of state apparatus and ceremonial obligations. The destination Balmoral Castle captivated public interest at the announcement of the journey. It was not only the clandestine nature of the journey. For almost 170 years, Balmoral has functioned as the private retreat of the royal family. It has served as a refuge for monarchs and heirs seeking solitude or contemplation for prolonged durations. This is the site where Queen Elizabeth II and her family sought refuge during difficult times, and it is also where she spent her last days in September 2022. The estate's remote location and extensive history as a sanctuary made it an obvious option for William seeking both solitude and insight. A considerable number of people in the United Kingdom possess a unique emotional connection to Balmoral. It serves as a symbol of continuity and a site where personal suffering and private decisions occur beyond public scrutiny. The conditions at Balmoral were under strict governmental supervision. Instructions were evidently provided to the on-site staff to maintain tight confidentiality, and there were also implicit limitations imposed on public access. The visit was designated as strictly secret inside the corporation, clearly indicating that he was not to be disturbed under any circumstances. The routine included solitary extended walks over the estate, moments of reflection by the River Dee, and the chance to contemplate away from the distractions of daily life in London. A prevalent method for royals to contemplate is by taking a walk, and Balmoral has traditionally provided such an atmosphere for many years. Several individuals who have visited the estate, including workers' guards and visitors, report that the Atlantic light in the tranquility of the Highlands strip away ostentation, allowing for genuine discourse and reflection. Those with first-hand experience often address this topic. It is particularly advantageous for an individual bearing a heavy burden to be in a clutter-free environment. The visit was not just about his solitude. A select group of senior advisors is said to have been conveyed to the castle in unmarked vehicles, where prolonged and heated deliberations occurred behind the granite walls of Balmoral. An unsettling discovery that reached the prince's desk was the central focus of their discussions. Numerous anonymous sources were depicted in narratives as individuals with proximity to the royal family or with pertinent knowledge on the matter. According to these sources, William received a compilation of documents, a report, and other messages that were really concerning. These publications did not emerge spontaneously. They were the result of ongoing inquiry conducted in the background. The day he acquired them marked a shift for Kensington. Consequent to the annulment of meetings and the reduction of the usual ambiance, the prince retreated inside to contemplate the knowledge he had obtained. Those who interacted with him at that period observed that he seemed apprehensive but resolute in preserving his composure. He meticulously reviewed the documents and spoke with a limited cadre of trusted advisors, all of whom had pledged to maintain confidentiality. The need for rigorous secrecy indicated that the event had both personal and institutional consequences. If the facts were made public, it might significantly affect the monarchy's image. In the absence of official confirmation, the public and the media used several techniques to bridge the gaps. Examples of financial misconduct, revelations about personal connections, and previously hidden realities about historical events were all proposed explanations. Certain versions said that the recordings would revise long-standing views of familial history, while others suggested they represented contemporary private talks. Although none of these assumptions were disclosed to the public, they underscore the significant stakes perceived by those following the narrative. The anonymous sources, together with the prevailing conjecture, lead to a familiar phenomenon seen today: ignorance breeds narratives. The silence of an institution reliant on accurate communication is subject to interpretation in an era when social media can amplify hints into headlines. The royal family, adapting to a faster and more scrutinizing media landscape, exemplified the challenge of balancing anonymity with the public's need for transparency and governance. The concealment that incited suspicion simultaneously reflected a decision taken by individuals in proximity to the prince. They contended that the issue was delicate and should be managed away from direct public scrutiny, at least until its legal and constitutional aspects could be understood. The narrative that emerged from those people was that William opted to go to Balmoral to get considerable distance from the intense pressures of London, allowing him to contemplate effectively. In essence, it was less a holiday and more a strategic retreat, a venue to assess legal and constitutional advice, contemplate personal implications, and devise a suitable response to the situation. Balmoral has significant symbolic relevance in royal history beyond its role as just a tranquil site for reflection. It was a location where familial decisions and personal reflections had transpired over an enormous duration. The rational choice for a leader, requiring time to contemplate several intricate options privately, was to choose this option. The decision was characterized by an emotional rationale. It was a choice that was both pragmatic and instinctive. The castle's apartments, the tranquil cadence of estate life, and the reality that Balmoral had served as a site of both solace and suffering for William all influenced the selection. Certainly that consciousness of history had considerable importance. The journey evoked recollections of Princess Diana for reasons beyond her identity as William's mother. Balmoral has considerable personal value in his life, as it is the site where he and his brother had joyful holidays throughout their childhood. Furthermore, it is the site where they received the news of Diana's demise in 1997. Balmoral serves as both a refuge and a scene of sorrow, offering consolation alongside distressing recollections. William's mother's experiences, including her challenges with the media, her commitment to truthfulness, and the enduring impact of her honesty on public perceptions of the monarchy, were believed by his advisors to have shaped William's mindset. Individuals in his inner circle assert that Diana's life and her choices have profoundly influenced his perception of his profession. Her decision to provide candid interviews and collaborate with Andrew Morton on her biography represented a departure from the traditional adage of never complain, never explain. While these actions were controversial, they stemmed from the belief that transparency might be necessary even at the risk of discomfort. Reports suggest that William contemplated such ideas throughout his time there, namely about how to reconcile personal integrity with the demands of an organization that often prioritizes conformity and cohesion. The narrative reveals that the information he received compelled him to face a familiar quandary, to either conceal a distressing truth for the sake of stability or to confront it directly and accept accountability for his actions. Reports indicate that he sought insight and a strategic approach that would satisfy both his sense of duty and the lesson imparted by his mother regarding the necessity of integrity and leadership, while in the tranquil surroundings of Balmoral and the library housing centuries of family archives. This internal conflict is intrinsically a captivating human experience. A man is shown as conflicted between familial loyalties and the civic responsibilities associated with being an heir apparent. These obligations may not always coexist harmoniously. The monarchy relies on a measure of discretion. However, its legitimacy in modern Britain is more contingent upon perceived sincerity and moral clarity. William asserts that there is no theoretical foundation for the two impulses. Memory, the lessons acquired throughout his childhood, and the public history of his family all shape his opinions. Consequently, addressing material capable of undermining that history posed an emotional and professional dilemma: what to disclose, what to withhold, and how to advance while preserving dignity and embracing accountability. Upon his return to London from Scotland, the matter transitioned from a private reckoning to a dilemma requiring communal resolution by the royal household. This signified a substantial change in the circumstances. Insiders characterized a sequence of private discussions between the prince and the king, marked by respect while highlighting a fundamental divergence in their approaches. William returned with convictions about addressing his discoveries, which did not quite coincide with the perspectives of other senior royals, especially his father, King Charles III. King Charles, having dedicated decades to the institution, is said to prefer a prudent and conventional methodology. This strategy entails safeguarding the crown's dignity by preventing problems from becoming public and resolving them discreetly. He asserts that preserving the monarchy's prominence requires many factors, including prudence and constancy. An adequate rationale exists for this institutional predisposition. Monarchies, unlike most modern political institutions, are founded on symbols, unbroken traditions, and a tenuous network of public trust. Individuals who have dedicated their whole careers to the organization often bear the primary obligation of maintaining the office's continuity and safeguarding the institution's mystique. Disseminating information, participating in public litigation, or having private grievances disclosed in the media jeopardizes the Crown's image for impartiality and stability, which is vital to its efficacy. This is precisely why several individuals inside the palace endorse prudence when challenging issues emerge to allow for measured and controlled responses, therefore averting the detrimental effects of public conflict. William has a more progressive and modern disposition shaped by the demands of a new era and the heritage bequeathed by his mother. He believes that the legitimacy of the monarchy in contemporary society hinges on perceptions of integrity and accountability, and that attempts to hide uncomfortable truths may be detrimental in an age of rapid information dissemination. Rather than relying on absolute silence, which may be seen as obfuscation in the future, he proposed acknowledging the issue, although indirectly. The philosophical dichotomy between an institutional inclination to conserve and a generational aspiration for transparency represents a significant debate in how the House of Windsor may address such difficulties in the future. This contradiction is not only theoretical, it also has significant real-world consequences. The decision to be truthful may impact legal strategy, affect media relations, and alter the public narrative. Furthermore, it may generate discord within the family and among personnel who possess entrenched loyalties to traditional company practices. Opting for silence may preserve a semblance of tranquility in the near term. Nevertheless, this might lead to a deterioration of trustworthiness if information emerges subsequently. The advisors to the prince were obligated to assess the potential legal ramifications, political consequences, and personal impacts on the prince's family members. Reports indicate that these assessments were conducted in a confidential assembly of advisors, including lawyers, constitutional scholars, and close aides, each with a distinct perspective on the suitability and risks of the circumstances. During this era, Catherine, the Princess of Wales, was regarded as a trustworthy confidant. It was said that she assisted William in contemplating options and maintained the stability of their family unit amidst the broader institutional discourse. She was recognized by colleagues and friends for her composure and supportiveness, regardless of the circumstances. Her mostly concealed influence significantly shaped William's approach to the personal and family dimensions of the situation's quandary. Her role was described by informed individuals as that of a discreet mediator, capable of reminding him of both their familial obligations and the broader scope of his public responsibilities. For several observers, the presence of a spouse capable of offering both pragmatic counsel and emotional support was a humanizing element. This detail emphasized the personal dimensions of what would otherwise be seen as just political. Upon William's return to public duties, observers saw a change in his conduct. The formerly stressed manner seen in the weeks before the trip had gradually evolved into what many described as a composed and resolute resolve. He maintained his commitments with consistent professionalism, while his manner exhibited an added gravity. It was as if an individual had undergone a rigorous examination and emerged with a clear hierarchy of priorities. Kensington Palace has provided just a brief and official summary of his journey, characterizing it as a period of quiet reflection. Additionally, the palace has not disclosed any additional public information about the documents or the particular matter that prompted the travel. The lack of explanation may result in the general audience being unaware of all the specifics. The interaction has proved to be illuminating in and of itself. It provided a unique look into the internal constraints that a contemporary heir must contend with, highlighting William's willingness to deviate from the standard procedure in situations when he felt the circumstances to be of sufficient importance to merit seclusion and isolation. At this particular event, the continuous discussion that is taking place within the royal family over the balance that should be maintained between tradition and the ever-changing expectations of a modern audience was brought to light. In light of the divergent perspectives held by William and Charles, it seems that the monarchy is now at a critical crossroads. The next generation is increasingly championing openness in order to maintain public confidence, whereas the generation that came before them places a higher priority on continuity and the preservation of institutions. The dynamics that were shown by this incident are essential to the norms that are expected of a contemporary monarchy. Due to the fact that it exists, the Crown is a hybrid institution that takes into account both political and ceremonial characteristics, as well as private and public aspects. it is possible that any choice made by a senior royal might have repercussions that transcend beyond the situation at hand. These repercussions could include the formation of public opinion and, in certain cases, the influence on constitutional debate. The administration of information that is upsetting is of utmost significance. It is possible that the relevance of the monarchy will be increased if a future king is seen to be trustworthy and attentive. There is a possibility that public dissatisfaction may increase when persons are seen to be evasive or secretive. William's choice to seek time and space, followed by his request for a discourse on transparency, is an indication that he is conscious of the changing connection that exists between the royal family and the public, which is something that has to be addressed. The palace is an example of a situation in which additional teachings are applicable. This instance illustrated how the spread of information in the digital era makes the maintenance of traditional confidentiality protocols more difficult. Even records that have been carefully maintained may be put in jeopardy, and even private discussions can be reconstructed via the use of clever inquiry. As a consequence of this, businesses are required to reevaluate their risk management procedures, which may include locating reliable consultants working together with legal counsel and determining whether or not to publicly recognize facts. This highlights the importance of having a trustworthy intergroup having settings like Balmoral, where choices can be made without instant public scrutiny, and having spouses who can have a calming impact on the relationship. In addition to this, it tests the human ability to endure terrible situations while they are isolated. Not only did the event have repercussions for the organization, but it also provided new perspectives on William's developing personality and leadership abilities. Indicative of a leader who is struggling to come to terms with the ethical implications of his upcoming position is the desire to withdraw for the purpose of reflection and to seek advice from a small group of trusted advisors inside the organization. Not only was he working to handle the crisis, but he was also attempting to navigate leadership in the face of unprecedented public demands for responsibility and openness. This choice demonstrates a temperament that is both sensible and frank, as it demonstrates an awareness of the risks associated with exposure, as well as the implications of concealment. Exemplifying this disposition is the decision to carefully consider all of the available alternatives, rather than rushing to choose an answer that would get a lot of attention. The response of the public to the incident revealed a present duality, as people craved both the intimacy of personal sincerity and the confidence of institutional stability. This dichotomy was visible in the public's reaction to the event. Successfully meeting each of those expectations is a difficult task. Individuals place a high value on authenticity and are opposed to what they perceive to be lying. Nevertheless, they are also dependent on the symbolic continuity that is supplied by a monarchy. It is vital for the royal family to possess sound judgment and the ability to embrace approaches that have developed over an assortment of media eras in order for them to be able to create harmony among the numerous demands that are placed upon them. From this point of view, it is possible that William's trip to Balmoral was less concerned with finding a solution to a specific problem and more concerned with developing his capacity to address and express sensitive issues in the future. There has already been an impact imposed by the occurrences that have taken place in close proximity to the unexpected travel, regardless of the specific nature of the information that was responsible for the need of the journey. At the highest echelons of the monarchy, where their influence is most evident, they have shown how personal history, institutional habit, and public expectation interact with one another. In addition, they have stated that William is actively working to refine his leadership style, which includes breaking from traditional approaches when it is required, seeking private advice, and re-entering public life with a more distinct sense of purpose. As a result of the fact that it represents a future king's pledge to accept truth responsibility and eventually change, the trip to Scotland may be seen by onlookers as a significant event. This is not because it solves the fundamental issue. Rather, it reveals the strategy that a future monarch wants to implement in the future. Even when the event was over, there was no definitive conclusion. The nature of the ensuing conversations was left unclear as a result of this, in addition to the fact that it brought up unanswered questions about the content of the papers that prompted such a rush. The queries covered the evaluation of the legal risk in proportion to the harm to the reputation, the balance between family devotion and public obligation, and the reconciliation of different leadership philosophies inside an organization that included many generations. The provision of straightforward remedies to such concerns is not practicable. Rather, these issues are complex difficulties that are likely to resurface when confronted with new obstacles. The decision that William made to confront the current circumstances in a private manner, contemplatively and with an emphasis on transparency, offers a glimpse into the ways in which he may handle such issues in the future. During the journey to Balmoral, the human element of royalty was brought to light, highlighting its everlasting value. Those individuals who have buried histories, allegiances, worries, and ideals are concealing their genuine selves behind the public identities that they assume. A story that incorporates both constitutional and personal components is the idea of a future king roaming the peaceful grounds of Balmoral, reviewing papers that have the potential to change the tales of his family and weighing the agonizing option between remaining silent and disclosing information. When private facts and public expectations come into conflict with one another, this story examines how people and organizations adjust to the situation. There is little question that the incident will be evaluated in a variety of different ways after the operations of the palace have been stabilized and the immediate demands have been reduced. This will be investigated as a strategic move, a view into the dynamics of the family, and a forerunner to the restructuring of the institution. At this point in time, it is evident that the Prince of Wales chose a strategy that encompassed seclusion and advice, together with introspection and determination. It's possible that these decisions won't fix all of the problems, but they will definitely impact his approach to leadership. Within the context of a monarchy that is in the process of perpetually redefining its relationship with the modern populace, the manner in which a future sovereign reconciles the dual responsibilities of personal loyalty and public accountability may be one of the most significant legacies that this clandestine visit to Scotland leaves behind. Thank you for watching the video. Please let us know your thoughts, and goodbye for now.